Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Our mission is to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their well-being. Two former colleagues and current friends, Allison Allen and Dean Martin, invite you to join them for an honest conversation that brings a personal perspective to the issues of leadership.
We're Allison and Dean, and today we're going to have some real conversations about the role of self-awareness in personal growth. The mission of Leadership Rewired is to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their well-being. So today we're having a look at what the role of self-awareness plays in your development and success as a leader. The title, intentionally provocative, I hope, is it's not them, it's you. So as a leader, Allison and I, we're going to have a good chit chat about this, but have you ever, as a leader, reflected on the different teams you've had? Or maybe you've worked at a number of different organizations. Yet perhaps there's a recurring theme where you would always say, most of my teams, I've often felt, they don't work hard enough. Or, wow, I've always struggled to get the right talent. Oh, all I do is end up managing performance. Or, I love my teams. My teams are always just so independent and they just do their thing. My people are great. They're always doing that. We want to look and say, what might that pattern be? I see you smiling there, Allison. What's the pattern that may explain this? And we sort of coming in with a sneaky suggestion of it's actually not them, it's you. Are you the constant? Allison, you're doing nodding. Tell me what you think.
No, I think 100%. I think the topic that we're going to dive into, which is, I think you introduced, which is, self-awareness and what are those things that you consistently do? And I don't actually know, I'll be honest myself. I don't know every single time when I join an organization, do I go, yeah, okay, what worked last time or the time before that or the time before that? I do notice when I'm working with teams and I get similar results out of similar people. I wonder to myself, okay, I need to shift something here. This is me, right? And so I wouldn't say I've always done that, but I definitely more recently have been in that space of sort of noticing patterns and the common denominator being myself.
And what shifted that for you? Why recently have you been able to do this?
I'm older. No, it's not just an age thing. I think, when you're under tight deadlines and when you're under, stress, especially in roles where you're leading like a talent acquisition function, you're under stress, you're trying to get things done, you're trying to get the best out of people. I think it becomes, this thing that pops in your face. It's like, oh my God, they're different people, but they're almost doing exactly the same thing. And I think more recently at my last two organizations, I noticed, okay, it's me. There's something I'm doing that's bringing this out in someone, and I need to shift and do something differently. Whether it be more delegation, whether it be more empowerment, maybe it's more specific feedback. And you know that I'm a big fan of situational leadership, so I'm always talking about matching the person in front. But sometimes, again, when you're under stress, you don't do that. You just revert back to what you know. So stress. I would say stress is one of those moments when you realize, okay, I need to check myself out.
What then? Yeah. For the folk who are listening, what might be a good indication that somebody has good self-knowledge and good self-awareness as a leader?
Well, for myself specifically, and I do think I have good self-awareness.
I concur.
Some of my past teammates may not necessarily agree, but I think I have great. But no, I think the agility and your ability to recognize that you're doing this thing and adjusting, like being able to really go, oh wait, this is happening, and then adjusting in the moment and feel comfortable adjusting. If you're, verbose and loud and theatrical, and you see everybody in the room looking like this, and, that showed up in 3 or 4 organizations, perhaps you want to sit down and bring it down 10 notches, and doing that in the moment actually says to the folks in the room, oh, wait, they recognize what they were doing and they are adjusting, and okay, this is good.
Right.
I'm less intimidated. So I do think there's something about the agility of being able to see it and adjust. What do you think?
Well, I'm thinking about what you said about the ability to adjust, or that agility. What's so good about that is it's not just like, oh, great, you adjusted. It's always so that what? So that your team now is getting what they need from you. So I think an
100%.
indication that somebody has good self-awareness, it's sort of like a longer term indicator of something, but is a team that is, I don't want to say just like really focused and able to work. And there's some ease about the way in which they're working. There's not like this high state of tension, even if there are deadlines. But that there's whatever this leader is doing isn't putting them into a state of hypervigilance where they're spending a lot of their working time and their thinking time and their emotional energy managing the manager. But they can focus it on their work and 100%. Their relationships and their thinking and their creativity. So that's also, I mean, maybe somebody's lucky. You could have a leader perhaps who's got pretty low self-awareness and they just got it lucky and they're just blasting their way through the work and their team successful. Yeah.
I also find, again, I recognize I'm doing it, I adjust. But I also find in certain situations, actually in most situations, when I'm transparent with my team, especially my directs, and I'm like, okay, I can be a lot sometimes, right? I want to win, I want to take the mountain, I want to move fast, and sometimes I'm very like theatrical. When I'm being too much, just tell me. Just right. Tell me when I'm being too much, right. And I welcome that, right? And you don't even have to put it in the guise of like feedback. It's really, because when people hear that word, they get all kinds of triggered. It's almost like when I'm being too much, just tell me, because I know I'm being too much, but sometimes I'm already down the path and I may just need you to pull me back. And some people are like, wait, you're welcoming me to help you adjust? Yeah, because if I'm doing something that's distracting you, then you and I can't get on the same page, which means we can't get work done. And who wants that? I remember, just a quick story. I remember when I was working at Twitter, there was a new manager reporting to me. And this manager, just really a great up and coming manager, I could tell, slightly intimidated. Here I am, a VP, and they're now a new manager, a senior manager reporting to me. And we were in this talent calibration session. And I'm just, you know me, I'm just like, and this and potential and, all the things. And I said to him, he said he tried to say something. And then I said, and he goes, oh, and then I'm still talking. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, no, I'm the one that's talking too much. I was like, please, let me, tell me when I'm doing that. I need to make space for you so that you can, bring your information to the story and you have space to be yourself. He wrote me a message later and said, no one has ever given him permission to do that. And for the first time in a long time, he felt psychologically safe. And I thought to myself, that is what I want. I want people around me that feel that regardless of my level in the organization, that they have the space and the comfort to be able to tell me that. And that's only because I said, hey guys, I can be a lot.
Yeah.
So just tell me. Yeah. So that's one of the things I think is important to recognize, is to give people permission to give you feedback or to share something.
Yeah. What else do you think that does for people when their manager asks or discloses things like that? Is there not a danger to that?
I think what it does, I think it makes people, I think managers feel more human to employees. or that the team is like, I love flat teams. And we used to have flat teams at Bloomberg. Like, it's like hierarchy was not the problem. It's like, this team is supposed to be around this body of work to get shit done.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I love flat teams, or at least the perception of flat teams. So yes, I'm sitting here as a VP and you're a senior managers, and maybe there's 2 or 3 levels between us. But when we're in a conversation together, we're all team members around whatever that topic is. And I think when you do that for people, you take away all that title stuff and barriers, and I think it flattens the team and it brings them together around the work and what we're trying to get done. And that's all we're trying to do is get things done. Right?
Yeah. I love that. What this is making me think of is that when we say we want a human-centered way of being a leader, if a leader requires, their own, their status or their position in order to influence, I think something's going wrong. So yes, organizations are structured in such a way that delineates for us who's accountable, who has responsibility for these people in terms of their pay or their performance, etc. But it's just that I think it should just be serving that purpose. You don't need to rely on the fact that, you're the VP of whatever in order to make sure people do stuff. That for me is, that's naughty. That's bad leadership. What we want to move towards is, this person has buy-in and they energize and they're clear because 2 human beings have been able to talk about some work and talk about things that, yes, you happen to be the manager, or yes, they happen to have this role, but I don't want to be super conscious of that. So coming back to, our conversation here around how does self-awareness play a part? I think one thing for leaders to think about is, to what extent are they relying on their, what we would say, positional power in order to influence? The fact that,
and we know that happens.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is why, part of the reason why I'm not sure if I'm not going to say I'm never going to work in corporate America again, but I'm just not sure if I ever want to, because you get so tired of that.
Yes.
Like, I think it's, leading with my position, leading with the power and the control I have, leading with my title.
Yeah.
It just and maybe it's just the way I'm cut, because of how I grew up, and everything is about hard work. And maybe it's because I'm, an African-American woman. Like, I don't know, but I have never felt like, I have a title, so therefore you must do.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been, I want to get work done. I want to get work done together. And, I think the thing that I notice that I bring through every organization is I want to get in the work every level. And it's bad to do that. Sometimes you do need to be sort of a VP in the corner somewhere. But yeah, I just don't like that.
No.
Like, how do you feel when someone's managing you that way because of their title?
Ooh. I do not like it. I think it makes me, where I would go with this is, it almost makes me sad, because I think I will and I have worked exceptionally hard and done wonderful, beautiful, creative things because I want to, and because I believe in a project we're doing, or the mission of the organization, or I see the results, or I see the impact. I want to do that. If somebody, if I see a leader relying on their position, and what that would look like is maybe saying, sort of intimating, this is the experience I have, or this is just, the role that I have, so therefore I need to make this decision, therefore you need to operate in this way. It just makes me a bit sad, because I think you didn't need to pull out that weapon for me to comply, if that makes sense, or to play nice.
No. And it's such an interesting word that you used just now when you said weapon, because that's what it feels like to people.
Yeah.
And it's about getting someone to cower and to pull back or to succumb. And how is that a team?
Yeah.
How is that, my role, your role, this thing we're working on together because we're a team.
Yeah.
I just think, I don't even know if those people are lacking self-awareness. I mean, I think they actually are very self-aware.
What do you think they're aware of?
That my title gets me what I want, or gets me a reaction, or gets me, it's almost like what we were talking about or the couple of days ago, but it's like, that doesn't even fall in the category of growth mindset, right? It's like you just really, I don't know. I think it's a whole different podcast, but I just think weaponizing power and weaponizing title and weaponizing position and weaponizing whatever to get people to do something is wrong.
Yeah.
And you lose people. And what I've found in my career is that you will retain those that are comfortable and fearful and complacent.
Yeah.
You will not retain top performers.
Ooh.
And people who want more for themselves and who actually know what they can do and what they can bring to the table. So whether they quit, whether they get so bad that you fire them, or whether they get so bad that you lay them off because you know they're no longer interested, whatever the things are, you will not retain them. Yeah. And it's a loss to the team, to the work, to the organization, because you are leading with power, a position of power. And it's just crazy to me. And maybe that's just why I've never, I don't know. Maybe I should be doing that, because I don't know.
What, leading in that way?
It's just not, I don't think I could ever do it. I'm just not cut that way. Like I actually just distance myself from people like that. I was going to say I'm disgusted with people like that, or I deplore them, and something else that popped in my head. But I just think those people are bullies. And I find myself often taking on the charge for other teams when I see that. Or if I recognize it in my own team, I'm calling it out. Yes. If it's in my own team and I recognize it, I'm like in your one-on-one, okay, what's the goal with that? Yeah. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to get out of people with this style? Yeah. And on this team, this is what we do, and this is what I expect. Yeah. And so we need to do better. Yeah. Take a class, read a book, happy to coach you, give you some examples, highlight it when you're doing it, and perhaps you shouldn't do it anymore. I can come up with 50 reasons, but when you notice it in someone else, in your peer, or if they're your boss, you got to figure out a way to sort of, manage that as well. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No. So I'm thinking what we've just been talking about is one of an indication or an indicator that perhaps a leader isn't really aware and able to embrace their own vulnerability is relying on their positional power. I wonder if there's some other indicators of what's the naughty leadership behavior, and what's the impact of that on a team when a leader maybe is aware of what they're doing, but it's not a conscious kind of deliberate, loving way of moving through the world, but it's a fear-based way of leading. And they may have an unconscious sense of, oh, I'm not good at this, so I want to cover it up. I hate it when this happens in teams. I don't know how to deal with it. I will cover it up. I will use these different methods. So are there some other naughty behaviors that we see leaders do?
Well, it's been my experience when I've been working with executives who do that. It's insecurity. Yeah. So they notice it. They don't have what they need to address it. Yeah. To your point, they cover it up or ignore it. Yeah. And it's usually insecurity. It's almost like it's like the kid that makes the mistake and then they spill something and then they cover it up with a paper napkin and they just hope no one sees it. Yeah. And parents walk in and they're just like, "What's that?" Or the brother's like, "Oh my God, Johnny." So it's like everyone sees it. So you're not covering it.
I know
up.
That's the
and your team thing. And your team feels it, right? Yeah. And so you're not covering it up. So, the best advice there is, again, if you notice that there's a repeat pattern, whether it be within different roles or different teams or even different organizations, then seek help.
Yeah.
Go to your manager and ask for feedback. Ask your manager to say, hey, when you notice me doing this, can you ask for coaching? Take some classes, read a book, reach out to one of us.
Yes. Yeah.
But when you notice it, do something about it, because you're not covering it up. It's actually very much there. And everybody's walking around it.
I know.
Or they're in a room and they're just kind of ignoring it. Or they're so it's crazy to me, but it's almost like you're tricking yourself.
Yes.
When in fact you're actually making it worse.
Well, that's like the Emperor's New Clothes thing. It's like, let's all collude and let's pretend that you don't see that I'm bad at X as a leader, and you will all just smile and never mention that, and we all just do that little dance together. And what makes me sad about that is it doesn't have to be that way. It's taking a lot of energy and focus away from the work that should be happening. Anything that is covered or that is protected, I'm very interested in that. What are you protecting? What do you imagine would happen if you actually, as a leader, owned up to the fact like, hey, I don't necessarily have a natural inclination to want to chat and talk a lot about your personal life, and it's something I want to work on because you are important. Rather than just dressing it up in we've got a big business critical thing, so we don't have time for socials or for me to ask you how your commute was or how your kids are or your partner. I'm just going to get straight down to business, and I'm going to protect myself in that way, saying I'm a no nonsense kind of leader and I'm task focused, and that's why I behave this way. Just call it. Say it as it is. That makes me sad for people.
I think when you get to a certain point, though, right, you start thinking, oh, I'm exposed, or my remit is bigger, or everyone's looking at me, or all these things, right? Yeah. And I think you literally think this is what I'm supposed to be showing up like. And so,
I know.
And I think there's something you just said I want to pick up on. It's like every person of the organization, all the way up to the CEO, is part of a team and plays a critical role. Let's go back to high-performing organizations. So if we're in a high-performing organization, we have made a distinct decision about every role, every team, every group, every division, all the body of work that they're doing so that we can build products or services or whatever. If we've done that, then that means you're in that role. You are human. You're growing, no matter your title, and you're learning. That's what you want to be doing. And so you're not going to, is it Marshall Goldsmith that's like, what got you there won't keep you there? Yeah, there's a little bit to that. Like you're now in this big remit, or you have this responsibility, or you're doing something more. You're learning. And so it's not all going to be perfect. It shouldn't be. And if it is, then either the organization made the wrong decision by putting you in a role that you're too good for. Probably not. Or, maybe you need to take on more responsibility if you're that good.
Yes.
But most people aren't. Most people are learning regardless of level. And be comfortable with that.
Yes.
I think that's what makes us like alive. Like, goodness, every single day, if you woke up doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same way, and not expanding your brain or your mind or your feelings or your experiences or your life. Like, who wants that?
There's a I don't know. I would cite the author if I knew, but there's a saying that just says, if you're not embarrassed of who you were a year ago, you're not growing. And as a leader, I would hope that when we look back at our careers, and the folk who are participating in this conversation here, if you think back to your first leadership role and as it's changed, I would hope that the sorts of things you were focusing on in terms of your own leadership has shifted. That it's not as we started our podcast, oh, I've always got people who are lazy, or I always end up being with people. That means you've been doing the same stuff for 20 years or 5 years. I want to know, like, oh, when I was starting as a leader, I really had to work very hard at being able to represent the organization and listen to my people. And then I've moved to now I'm really battling with not, giving too much direction to my individual contributors because I have leaders for that. That's my big thing. Oh, now I want to see that there's a shift. That's what growth looks like in terms of my own personal life as well. I don't want to look back and go, oh, I've had the same issue since I was 20. You need to do some work here, buddy. It needs
100%.
to, have been refined and worked upon. So coming back to this, like, it's not them, it's you. If you are still sitting as a leader going, oh, I've been pretty consistent as a manager and this is what's been true of all my teams since I've ever led, I would say there's maybe you're missing a trick. This is an opportunity to get some feedback and go, is there something new I can discover about myself? Because my team knows it. I love what you said there. My team knows it. That's what's terrifying. I remember when I was leading at one point going, trying very hard to hide elements of my fact that, like, operationally, I'm not the tightest in the world. I will love my people. I will give them a vision, direction, support, and empower. But, like, oh my God, I've lost the spreadsheet and I've dropped this piece and, and, like, trying so hard to cover that up.
Yeah.
And then actually realize, oh no, they know. They work with you. They know this. So what are you going to do about it? Continue to hide it and have them be exasperated and talk about it behind the scenes, or call it out a little bit, do some work, improve, and then call it out and say, actually, I'm not this great at this. I'm not so great at this. I feel a little bit out of my depth in this little element. Who's great in my team who's going to back me up on that? Diffuse some of that
100%
tightness. I need to protect what people are discovering about me. They know it. Ease, relax a little bit, and then you can be amazing at your other stuff.
No, I think the thing that I want our listeners to really zero in on what you just said, which is part of self-awareness is recognizing what you're good at and what you're not good at. Yeah. Especially if you've heard the feedback, right? Yeah. And quite frankly, to some extent, when you get to a certain level, you just don't, it's actually not even good if you do it because it won't be done well. Yeah. It's the perfect opportunity to delegate.
Yes.
To a top performer on your team, somebody you're trying to develop for something bigger. And you said that, right? Recognizing the skills in your team and bringing somebody, closer to you who happens to be a top performer that you want to invest in. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And by the way, again, your team knows that you're not operationally savvy. They're just sitting there going, I used to have someone who worked on my team who actually followed me to a couple of places and she knew. Yeah. And she was just like, okay, can I just take the spreadsheet? Can I just have the spreadsheet? Why don't you just give me the spreadsheet and let me do it? I was just like,
I love this.
I don't have, I'm not vain. Sure.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the things I've said, I remember I was facilitating a group once, but of leaders, and we were talking about this very thing. And I said to them, if we think about our fictional characters, the television show you love to watch, whatever it is, Broadchurch or like, what, that's top of mind for me, or you're watching RuPaul's Drag Race or whatever. The people who we love actually still have flaws. So whether they're fictional or whether it's real life, you watch this thing and this person is great at this, and they're such an idiot here. They're a real asshole when it comes to this, and they, and we still love them with all of that. And that's how I also, would encourage leaders to think about their teams. Like, we are all, incredibly complex, and there are things we are great at, like you said, and things we're not so good at. So let's normalize the fact that as a leader, you would say, I'm never going to be absolutely exceptional at this one thing or these two things. but I'm really good at this other stuff. Let me double down on my strengths. That is what will differentiate me as a leader. Make anything that's a bit of a weakness, make that sort of like make that inconsequential, get good enough so that you just meeting standards, and then invest in where you're great, rather than having this terrible fear or, self-imposed expectation that you're going to be amazing at everything. Because then that also...
I love the normalizing that leaders aren't great at everything.
Oh, I love that. That's what makes
almost
good
like a hashtag.
Characters.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So be the leader that's like, yeah, I'm great at all the spreadsheets and operationally I'm great. Or I can set a vision, I can mobilize people, but I'll forget names and people's birthdays. Okay.
Right.
Work on it a little bit, but that's okay. I think where I, as a member of a team, have been enormously exasperated is when I'm faced with leaders who are working so hard at protecting their perceived weaknesses. I'm like, I'm not gonna ding you for that. I actually want to see that. That's going to make me want to work harder for you. If you can go, Dean, guess what? I'm a bit crap at this little piece. Can you back me up here? Like, sure.
100%.
I'll stay late. I'll do anything to have your back on this piece.
100%. And I think there's something around how do leaders actually figure out what they're good at and what they're not great at?
Yeah.
And a lot of leaders want to know that kind of before they start working with a team.
Right.
So as you move from company to company, or you move from a team within an organization to another team, or even a bigger role, there's a good moment there to do some kind of psychometric tests, like Hogan or Insights, to really sit down with your leader and craft, okay, this is what I used to do, and this is why you gave me this role.
Yes.
What looks different, and how do you want me to show up now?
Yes.
And then let's honestly talk about whether or not that way you want me to show up now, I'm really good at.
Yes.
And if so, how can we craft a strategy around that?
Right.
I think sometimes the transparency and the open conversation with your team and your boss is a way of sort of laying out there in a very vulnerable way what you need to work on and how you need to get better, and almost make it everyone's responsibility to help you be successful.
Yeah.
But having that awareness of, okay, this is the new role, or this is the new expansion, or this is the new organization. What exactly are we expected to do? Where do I see myself in that? Where does my manager see myself in that? And then how do I support myself in the growth?
Right.
And again, welcome that sort of open dialogue around working together. I think is super important.
Yeah. So you've spoken about getting maybe some kind of a 360 degree or a multi-rater feedback, some kind of a leadership assessment or whatever. Some of those you can just buy for yourself, or maybe in a leadership development or the talent development function, there's a possibility to do something like that. Work with a coach.
When I've left companies and gone somewhere else, I have reached back to people I used to work with and say, okay, I don't work there anymore.
Yes.
I work somewhere else. Keep it real. I've always asked you to do this, but keep it real with me now. Tell me what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah.
And then again, that transparency you can bring into the new organization and use that as like, these are the things I need to work on. And then here's where I can use your support.
Right. Yeah. Are there other ways in which you've developed your own self-awareness that we could share with people listening?
No, I can't think of anything that I would add in terms of developing. I feel, I guess for me, I just know myself really well. I know when I'm taxing all my energy. I know 99.9% of the time know when I'm not showing up well. And sometimes I'm so exhausted, I can't stop myself. And then I have to go home or go away or take a break or, sleep for a couple hours. But I can't think of anything else I would add except to say I think it's really important. And the beauty of self-awareness is really, I was going to say a conversation, but it's really this acknowledgement in yourself of that you're human. And there are things that you're going to do exceptionally well, and there are things that you're not going to do well.
Yeah.
And the things that you're not good at are the things that you need to work on. You have to make time to work on them.
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah.
And working on them could be self-development, but working on them could be that you just recognize that you're not good at it. And so how do you build a team or resources to support you?
Yeah.
But there are things that, I think that fall squarely in the leadership camp. Like you use the operational example. I think operations is part of being a leader. But I think there are things that sit squarely in the leadership camp that you have to work on and you have to develop.
Yes.
We were talking about emotional intelligence the other day. And we were talking about change management. And I was just like, if you're negative on emotional intelligence, you as a leader have to have emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So you need to figure out what you need to do to get some emotional intelligence. Being able to work in an Excel spreadsheet is, one of those things where you may want to use another resource or other resources to do that. Emotional intelligence is probably where you should spend your time. And I guess what I'm saying is not all development areas are equally weighted. Some of them require priorities, and probably the ones that sit squarely in leadership are the ones where you need to be focusing some time and energy.
Yeah. No, I like that. And emotional intelligence, some of that initial work done by Daniel Goleman is that awareness of self, awareness of others, and being able to have a positive impact on others. That's again, where we're going to. This isn't just about being a wonderful human being. It's because you're a leader here and you're getting paid a salary and you have a responsibility to people to really get them in the right headspace and heart space to be able to do easy, clear work without having to manage you, deal with your moods or your insecurities or your drama or your hang-ups.
Your responsibility is to +1. Your responsibilities are to your people, the work, and the organization. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, let's flip that. Leaders think I'm responsible to the organization. Yeah. The work and the people are last. Yeah. Your job is to get the best out of people, which means that you have to center. You know what you have to do. You know the mountain you have to take. Your job is to get those people to the mountain and over it. You can't do that by thinking about them last. If you're thinking about the mountain, you're like mountain. Meanwhile, you don't know who is on your team, how they work, what they do, what they're capable of or anything. Then that'll be why you're using your title, because now you're threatening people because you really don't have a good sense of your people. So if you center yourself around your people, the work. So I know what I have in my people. I know who they are. I know what the work is. So I know what skills I need. Okay, skills, work. That work has already come to you by the organization. You just got to get it done. So think people, think work, think organization. You're committed to all of them.
Yes.
You're responsible for getting that work done, but you got to get it done through people, which means you have to center on them, which means you have to be keenly aware of how you show up and how it impacts them.
Yeah. In situational leadership, they actually talk about appraisal of leadership as the fancy word of saying every single one of your team have an appraisal of you, know you, and talk about you. When the day ends, their husband will say, "Oh, how was work?" And they'll go, "Oh, my manager, oh God, she's a nightmare." Or when the mother phones, how's your new job going? "Oh gosh, I've got this manager who's just," they are talking about you. What do you want them to be saying about you? So so that human centered, like really orient yourself towards your people. I think that investment of time and attention never goes unrewarded. Never goes unrewarded for people to know, oh, my manager actually knows me and sees me and understands that I too have flaws and things I'm not good at, and they've got my back on this. They're not threatened by this because they're not threatened by their own flaws. They have a way in which they are navigating, how to be a leader, knowing that there's some things they're exceptional at and not so good at. They can do it for themselves. They can do it for me.
Some managers and leaders are listening right now and they're saying, I have 200 people. How am I going to get to know 200 people?
Yeah.
That's not exactly what we're saying. No. But to answer that question, you have a directs team. Those are the ones that you really need to know. And then every layer under them, you need to get to know through them. Yeah. So if you have a leader and they have 5 directs, I'm not suggesting that you spend time with the 5 directs and your leaders, but I am suggesting that you have conversations with your leaders about their team and what's going on and what's happening, and coach them so you have awareness of every level below you, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's an easy way to be, how do I get to know 100 people? Like, I've heard that so many times. How do I get to know 200? It's not possible. That's not what we're saying.
No.
Give us a little bit of credit. But make sure you put the right leadership team under you, that you hire the right people, that you have the right skill sets for the work that you have to get done, because you have to get work in your entire organization done through that leadership team that reports to you. Those are the ones you need to know well. Those are the ones that you need to inspire. And granted, you're going to, through a town hall or a big quarterly meeting, you're going to inspire everyone. But you want to make sure that you understand the broader team through your directs. Right. That's the way it works.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Can we maybe just come up with 1 or 2 other things that a leader could do in order to deepen their self-awareness, or just pick up on? I wonder what, unconsciously they may not know this is how I'm showing up. Are there other ways in which they can sort of look for evidence of the impact they're having?
Well, look, we've talked about self-reflection, right? Which is like, you're doing it. We've talked about open the space to your team and ask them to let you know when it's happening or what it looks like. We've talked about asking your manager to get in there with you and be like really, really thoughtful and in sharing feedback and setting the stage, talking about the from to. We talk about all the time, like, you need to move from this to this. Okay, what does to look like? I think, well, I'm not suggesting this, but I actually use my kids when I think about COVID, right? When I was literally working in the living room. And I'm not suggesting that people get your kids to monitor your calls. But my kids used to hear me on these meetings, right? And they would hear me talking or giving feedback or one-on-one, because they'd be passing through. And most times I have a headset on or I have earbuds on, so they can't actually hear things. But sometimes I would be, talking, and they would say, "Mom, you were too loud," or "Mom, why are you talking to your team that way?" or "Mom, why are you so theatrical?" or "Mom," and they're repeating back to you what is true and what you've asked the team to share. And then I think sometimes they would go one step further and say, "You do that when you're talking to us, or when we are in these parties, or when you're talking to Nana," or so it's like, there are, often when we're doing leadership development and we do this deep self-awareness with people, self-reflection or self-assessment with people, we put it in the context of work and we say, this is how you are at work. And I've always had an issue with that. I've always had an issue with that, because personally, I know this is me at work, but I also know this is me at home. So it's like, so it's like, you can almost use your family to read reports that happen, or to listen on a virtual call. Not listen, but use your family to sort of do I do
I
this?
think so.
Do I, am I this way?
Yeah.
Someone will say, well, yeah, when you clean out the garage, I mean, you're like a crazy person. Like, I can't get you to like lift your head.
I know.
Or when you're cutting the grass, you cut the grass in straight lines. And when the dog runs across, you have like a major meltdown, and it's like, there are a lot of things that
Yeah.
show up in our personal
Yes.
lives and the way that we are with our family and our friends, even alone, quite frankly.
Yeah.
That actually is a reflection of what's happening at work.
Yeah.
So again, you can keep it focused at work, but feedback, manager partnership, your team partnership, ask for that open sort of environment to like talk about what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
But also talk to your family at home and
yeah.
see what you hear.
Yes.
If they're afraid to give you feedback, if they're like, Dad, we can't say anything to you because you're the VP or something, then you're carrying that title stuff too much at home. So I'm joking, but partly serious.
No, for sure. No,
that's the only thing I can think of. What about you?
I love that. As you were talking, it reminds me of there's a thing we say in coaching, which is how we do something is how we do everything. So you're right that how I know sometimes when I've been managed by somebody and I know they have like, maybe they're super, super detailed. I look at them and I go, ooh, I know exactly how you're parenting. Or somebody is like super attentive one moment with me as a manager and then they drop off. I'm like, oh, I bet that's been a recurring theme in your dating life. And there's something very consistent in us. How have we dated? Who are the people, the relationships that have not been successful for us? What have we always said? Oh, it's because they What's the underlying theme there? It is probably present in how you view your manager, in how you view your team, in how you think about your organization. So we have our lives are, if we want to pay loving and clear attention to it, there's so much data to actually look and see. This is how I'm showing
100%, and they're intertwined. You're like one human. Like it's just like it's almost like you have this sweet dad at home, and he's so nice, and then meanwhile he's suppressing something, right? He's like, I can't show this side of myself, so let me be nice, and And meanwhile the kid knows, but they're just like, oh, he's so nice. And then you go to work and you just let it out on everybody. Right? And so it's like you're human. This is part of being self-aware. You are a human being. You have things that drain you and things that power you up. And you have, things that jazz you and make you excited and things that are like, oh my God, you dread. It's just life. The thing is that you're a leader and you have to do it. Right? At work, you're responsible for it. It's in your remit. It's something you're getting paid for. So you have to figure out those strategies to help you push through so that you can focus on the people, the work, and the organization. Get the people to do the work they're going to deliver for the organization. I can keep going up and down this ladder, but that is what it is. If all you're doing is focusing on the organization and you don't have the people focus and they're running all over the place, then you're not delivering to the organization. So you have to focus on the people to do the work so you can deliver to the organization.
And then in the process, back to our vision here, or the mission statement rather of our podcast, is all so that without sacrificing your sense of well-being. I care very deeply about what does it feel
100%.
like to be this leader. My heart breaks when I think about leaders who go to work thinking, oh God, I've got one-to-ones today. I've got another team meeting, or what do I say? I'm going to cancel the team meeting. I've got nothing to say. Seriously? That mustn't feel good. So let's come back to, we're talking about self-awareness today, how this supports you as a leader, the value in developing just as a human being. It's going to make you better at your job. It's just going to feel nicer. It's going to sit better for you as a living, breathing person on this planet, rather than like, I just have to suck it up and do it whilst I'm at work and then I can get home and relax. No, let's, integration is what we want for people, to feel that resilience, to feel that, sense of well-being, to feel like they're part of a community and not alone in a leadership
I wish
role.
well-being was something that I just focused on earlier in my career. I think there were many times that I talked myself into working late or traveling or ordering dinner for my kids, and almost I sacrificed a lot of my time with my children, and just to be at work, just to break the glass ceiling, or tell yourself you'll make up for it later. And now they're in college, right? And there are times that I look at, okay, if I had done this differently, if I was more self-aware that that I actually need to be close to my kids in order to get energy, right? And it wasn't that I wasn't close to my kids. I love my kids to death, and they would say that. But you have to have well-being at the center of this whole thing. It's just, what's draining you, and what's not feeding you, right? And so if you're fed by your personal life, and then you've got this really high demanding job, you have to figure out a way and contract, but you definitely have to figure out a way to strike a balance with both your family and that job. So you can give the job everything you need. And you think, there were plenty of moments where I was working until 12 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking I'm giving the organization everything I got. So they're going to see how great I am and promote me or give me something. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're really not, because you're killing yourself to work those hours, but you're not really doing the best because you're thinking about your family. You want to be home. You want to be putting your kids to bed. You don't want them to be worried about the fact that they haven't seen you all week, So I don't live in the past of like, oh my God, beat myself up. But, I accept what I have right now, which is why I call my kids pretty much and harass them and, like lay on the bed when I'm around them and give them hugs when they don't want to and kiss them a lot, But, and they would say I was a good mom and I was there, but I know I wasn't. And I think that well-being piece is really important. If you know what feeds your soul, if feeding your soul is being worked 24/7 and you've got a family at home, you got to strike that balance as well. Like, how do you do that so that you're not feeling like, oh, I'm going home because I'm supposed to. And then all of a sudden, you're kicking the dog and the cat and your partner doesn't really care about you and life is just really horrible at home. You got to strike a balance. And at the center of balance is well-being. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Good, thank you.
So I don't know that there's much more we want to get into on this one. Is there anything else you can think that we missed, Dean?
No, I think this is just do the work. Do the inner work.
Do the inner work. So if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and share with your friends. We are passionate about this podcast. We feel like every podcast we're getting better and better and better. You're starting to see a little bit of who we are. This isn't even the fullness of who we are, so expect to see a lot more and learn more. Reach out to either of us if you want to work with us or learn more about what we do for you, for teams, for organizations. Our links and our contact information are in the bio of this podcast. So as always, Dean, we always close with, what is your personal and honest truth about self-awareness?
Ooh. I think it's almost going to come back to something I've already said, which is to be a leader is such a privilege. And let people get to know who you are so people get to really benefit from the fullness of you as a leader. And for you,
it is your obligation to be keenly aware of who you are and how you show up for your people. I think if you don't realize the impact that you have on the people who work in your team, whether that be a hard dotted line team or an indirect team or a project team, if you are not aware how you show up and how it impacts them, one, it's a shame, but two, get aware, because you will not get the best out of people unless you are aware how you're impacting them. And it's your obligation to figure that out. Hiding, leading with your title, these are really, really shitty ways to lead people, and they feel shitty to the people who work with you. So get in touch with yourself, figure out how you're showing up, ask for an honest truth from someone that you trust or don't trust, and listen and do better. All we want is for leaders to do better. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate you and look forward to seeing you next time on our next podcast.